Kevin Nagani back with you. Closeout game here for the Bucks, taking on the Bulls. Game 5. Bucks up 3-1 in the series. Bobby Portis with the miss. Giannis, think again. How about 16 points in the paint in the first half? I mean, all this talk about losing Chris Middleton after game 2. Well, everybody stepping up and then led by the train that is Giannis in the lane. My goodness, they were up by 16 after 1. Early in the second quarter, Giannis in the paint, 3 defenders. What are you going to do? What? You can't stop it. 23 points in the first half, the most points in the first half in his playoff career. They're up by 18 at the break, under 2 to play in the quarter. Giannis floating. Average in the series, 29 points, 13 rebounds, 6 dimes, shot 57% from the floor, finished with 33 points. And the Bucks, gentlemen sweep, 4-1, 116-100. According to Caesars Sportsbook, the defending champs have the third shortest odds to come out of the East. The Celtics are currently the favorites to win the conference, while the Heat are just ahead of the Bucks. Alan Hahn, Monica McNutt back with us here. So, Monica, when you look at this matchup, because up next here for the Bucks, those Celtics, what is the single biggest factor you're looking forward to watching in that series?
I cannot wait to see how Ime Udoka and company game plan defensively for Giannis. Now, bear in mind, Kevin, the Nets relied so heavily on iso ball that it played perfectly into what the Celtics wanted to do in terms of their athletes and their scheme. The Bucks don't rely on iso as much. In fact, Giannis has gotten about 20% of his points that he scored versus the Celtics in transition, and it is so hard to guard in transition with a guy like Giannis, who you mentioned is a train coming down the lane, right? And so I'm curious to see, will they try to make this series physical with the bumps we saw them use against Kevin Durant? And then what will Giannis's response to that be? He has a much more complete supporting cast than Kevin Durant had. So I cannot wait to see this defensive X's and O's in this one.
Alan, that supporting cast, they've been fantastic. I do want to hear your thoughts here with the guys around Giannis in helping him, especially with Middleton still out. Looks like they're going to reevaluate the situation next Wednesday, so it looks like he'll miss at least the first 2 games with this sprained MCL.
Yeah, and game 7 of this series, I believe, is May 15th, so there is a lot of time for him to get back if he can. But listen, the Bucks are 5-0 this season without one of their big 3, including Drew Holiday. So they are learning and have learned to play without their main guys. But it's still, you're certainly going to miss Chris Middleton. But what you have now are guys like Pat Connaughton, like Grayson Allen, who are knocking down those open shots. You have Bobby Portis, even with the glasses on, the bifocals Bobby knocking down threes as well as a stretch guy. That's also important. Brook Lopez and that matchup is going to be big as well. But the factor you have to watch in this series is a player that the Celtics brought back into the fold, and that's Al Horford. Al Horford was used in the past when Brad Stevens was coach as a bit of a Giannis stopper. And that is something to watch here as well. Do they employ that same defense? Because watch how that goes. You know what else watching this series, Monica? When does Grayson Allen do something to get the Boston crowd against him? And if it's against Peyton Pritchard, he might not get out of the building. But you know that's coming in this series.
It is definitely inevitable.
Yeah, I'm predicting game 2. A tangle up with Marcus Smart in the Garden. Shades of Danny Ainge on the other side here because he fits that mold. And let's talk about the star for the Celtics, Monica. What are the expectations here for Jason Tatum, especially after we saw that emotional series sweep against KD and the Nets?
Well, you can imagine that Jason Tatum probably will be heavily guarded by Drew Holiday, who's the Bucks' best on-ball defender. And so he's going to have an opportunity to sort of continue to ascend in the conversation of the greats currently in the league. I thought through that series, and I'm almost willing to say through the playoffs, as far as a two-way guy, Jason Tatum had provided the most complete performance on both sides of the basketball. And so he's going to be called on heavily to navigate guarding Giannis Antetokounmpo on the other side, because that's going to be a collaborative effort indeed.
Okay, guys, let's play a game of either or as we look ahead to tonight. I know you guys have been waiting here. Monica, who wins, the Sixers or the Raptors in Game 6?
Ooh, Nagandi, I am going with the Sixers in the game, or excuse me, the Raptors. I'm sorry.
Crazy, Monica. Oh, my God.
I think the Raptors are rolling. It's just bad on your end. Sorry.
Oh, no.
How do you do that?
Alan, can you help me
guy.
out here?
How do you do that to the guy? You know he's on the edge.
I mean, I don't know how you
It's early, my bad.
flip-flopping like that.
All right, Alan.
That's a Jeff Saturday pancake
Yes,
by Monica
it is.
right there.
You're going to peel me off the floor. Suns or Pelicans, Alan? Who you got?
I'm going to go with the Suns, and this is the reason why. You get Devin Booker back. First of all, stop the presses. A guy who's hurt is actually going to play in the playoffs for his team. That's nice to see. But also the fact that when he's in the lineup, they have the #1 offensive rating team in the league. When he's out of the lineup, it's 27. He makes a difference. We overlook him as a superstar in this game. He makes an impact.
Monica, who you got here? Mavericks closing it out against the Jazz?
All right, let me check my notes so I make sure I don't stick my foot in my mouth. I have the Mavs getting this one done. The Mavs, people, out of Dallas. Listen, Luka has re-energized this squad. He had a tremendous game in his return, but prior to that, did you see Jalen Brunson? Do you see Dorian Finney-Smith? This, to me, is a team, to Alan's point earlier, that has tremendous connectivity. They play for one another. And Jason Kidd said from the jump, they don't believe that the Jazz can make enough two-point baskets to beat them, and that's proven true.
I still love you, Monica. And I say that every single day because that's the name of my wife as well. So Monica McNutt, Alan Hahn. Later on this hour as I try to recover. Tomorrow night we'll have Game 6 of the Western Conference first-round matchup. The Grizzlies, they take on the Timberwolves. Grizzlies up 3-2, looking to close out the series. Our coverage begins 9 Eastern on ESPN. Bucks close out. I can't believe we're still talking about this series as the Sixers are now in danger of a historic playoff collapse. Joel Embiid's overtime winner in Game 3. Philly was up 3-0, but Toronto's won the last 2. And following that loss, Embiid said that teammate James Harden needs to be aggressive and be himself. He added it's not really his job. It's probably on the coach. Speaking of that coach, Doc Rivers, he's lost 7 of his last 8 chances to close out a series. His 31 losses with a chance to clinch a series, most by a coach in NBA history. Doc getting defensive?
Well, it's easy to use me as an example, but I wish y'all would tell the whole story with me, all right? My Orlando team is the HC. No one gives me credit for getting up against the Pistons who won the title. The Clipper team that we lost 3-1. Chris Paul didn't play in the first 2 games and was playing on one leg. And then the last one, to me, is the one we blew. That's the one I said, we blew that. I would say with me, some of them is I got to do better always. Always take my own responsibility. And then some of it is circumstances happen. You know, this one, let's win it, and we don't have to talk about it.
Let's bring back Monica and Alan. Hopefully you guys can talk me off the ledge. Monica, on a scale of 1 to 10, what is your level of concern here for the Sixers entering Game 6 tonight in Toronto?
Nagandi, my friend, my level of concern is an 8. Han, wait a minute. My concern level is at an 8. And it honestly has less to do with Doc Rivers and more to do with his players. Now, I don't mind that sound from Doc Rivers. It's honest. I think that he mentioned that Orlando team. That was very impressive. However, it's a results-driven industry, and the recollection that most of us have is the last time that happened to him. Now, when it comes to his personnel in this particular matchup, if Joel Embiid doesn't have 35 and 12, they will not win Game 6. Like, he just cannot rely on anybody else. Even when they were hot and we were asking if we were concerned about James Harden because Tyrese Maxey was emerging at the second scorer, Alan, I thought that as long as Joel Embiid was putting up MVP numbers and he got help from somewhere, they would be okay. But if he has anything less than 30 and 12, it's a problem. It's a problem.
You got to also look at the other side of the court, too, and defense. Look, I'll use the phrase again. Confidence comes from demonstrated performance, and it also works here with the Sixers. Now, first and foremost, spare me the slander of Doc Rivers. This is a guy that won a championship and in a 5-year span, a title, a finals appearance, and an Eastern Conference finals appearance as well, while the Miami Heat were the big 3 there. So he can coach and he can win, and he's done it. But the demonstrated performance does include this. This is how you get an 0-3 meltdown. This is the recipe for disaster, Kevin, and I'm sorry, but this is the reality I'm giving you right now. Hold your nose, here comes the cold water. Injury to a star player. You got